Welcome back, everyone. The political spotlight turns to immigration this week. Today, a team of Republican and Democratic senators showed off their plan for reform. And let's bring in Andrew once again. He's got more on that.
Well, that's right, Rich. The bipartisan group made up of 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans are making quite a splash with their proposal, a plan that some Republicans label as nothing more than amnesty. Immigration reform is controversial and complicated. But today, a bipartisan group of senators said their plan for a sweeping overhaul could be a breakthrough.
I think today's an important first step in what's going to be a significantly complicated journey.
This will be the year Congress finally gets it done.
The plan includes a path to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented immigrants, increased border security, guest worker programs, and a crackdown on businesses that employ undocumented workers.
We have been too content for too long to allow individuals to mow our lawn, serve our food, clean our homes, and even watch our children while not affording them any of the benefits that make our country so great.
Washington's past attempts at immigration reform have failed, so some states have taken their own steps. On Sunday, Illinois became the 4th state and the largest to allow undocumented immigrants to drive. The most controversial element of this framework is the path to citizenship. And a key outstanding issue is how long would that actually take? But some Republicans dismiss this as amnesty. The bipartisan group of senators acknowledge that getting this plan through Congress isn't guaranteed, and the real hurdle is in the Republican-controlled House. But the presidential election may have shaken up the dynamics of this controversial issue. Latinos made up 10% of voters last November, and President Obama won 71% of them. And tomorrow, President Obama travels to Nevada to push his own plan for comprehensive immigration reform. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. We're now pleased to be joined on set by Marcela Berland, a political strategist and president of Latin Insights. All right, you've got the rough outline of what this thing looks like. Are you optimistic? Do you like the plan, first of all?
Well, what I like the most is the fact that we're talking about immigration reform finally. After, 4 years ago, we had the promise that immigration reform was going to be passed within the 12 first months of the president, and it didn't happen. So what I like is the fact that it's a bipartisan committee that is pushing this. The president is on board, and I think given what we saw in the last election, I'm very confident that this time is going to happen.
How is this different than the plan that then President Bush tried to pass but didn't have Republican support for?
Well, the main difference is the lack of support that Bush had. As McCain correctly said, is very similar. The principles are there. Now we need to talk about how we're going to get there. But obviously there's going to have a path to legalization or whatever you want to call it for all the undocumented that are in this country. In the past, there wasn't really the willingness to make it a reality, but I think now, given what had happened in the election and the fact that Republicans understand that they need Latinos, is going to become a reality.
I haven't heard too much in the way of complaints from the left of this. I mean, there's some privacy issues and stuff. On the right, we're hearing they say, hey, these 4 guys may like this on the Republican side, but for the Congressman Kings and the rest of the world, they're saying this is dressed up amnesty. You think at the end of the day, Republicans will get behind this out of political necessity, where a few years ago, the then President Bush got a really cold reception from his own party?
I mean, on one hand, you have Governor Bobby Jindal, who over the weekend says the Republican Party has to stop being the party of stupid and saying dumb things like Aiken's comments about women's rights. They're looking for a harbor where they can get into and they can become more moderate and broaden their appeal. It's almost like a duh moment that Latinos in particular, and it's a mistake to always look at the Latino community as a block. It's obviously a lot of different factions of that. But nonetheless, be able to talk to them in a way that says, we're not keeping you out. We're not saying you don't belong. We're going to try to engage you, but then also deal with a very curious phenomenon in immigration politics that says the people are already here. The people who went through the process to get here step back and say, whoa, wait a minute. What about me? Yeah. I went through the right process. Yeah. You're cutting the line. And that's always been, forget the security aspects of it. But then the other point is, did you hear McCain's comments initially when this came out? He was like, well, the devil's in the details. We got to work this stuff out. The language is going to be. So he left himself a little bit of a wiggle room as he moved forward on this
I
thing.
want to see what the political ends are going to be.
Right,
Exactly,
so-
yeah.
There's a bigger problem for the Republican Party when it comes to immigration reform of any kind. And I think back to the Republican primary and Republican debates that we saw last year. Mitt Romney talked about self-deportation and was booed. There was another candidate, it might have still been Mitt Romney, who talked about the DREAM Act and was booed by the crowd. The party membership is anti-immigration reform at this point, and to a certain degree, arguably anti-immigration or anti-immigrant to a certain
But
degree.
you know what?
Changing
did
that
the math,
culture
though.
within the party.
Yeah,
It's
but
not.
but I
It's
don't-
not
Richard,
about the math.
It's not about the math. This is a path to citizenship, but how does it get past the House? And I agree with Andrew. It doesn't. It's so crazy in Washington.
No, but there is
it,
a big, sorry to, well,
it almost doesn't matter, even though it does, what these senators do. What happens when it gets to the House?
there is a big distinction between the leadership of the party and the members of the party. I think some leaders within the Republican Party are very much opposed. But if you look at the polls within the general population, including Republicans, they all feel like, well, we need to find a solution because these 12 million people or more than 12 million people are not going to suddenly disappear. Okay, maybe let's be tougher regarding the ones that may want to come, but what are we going to do? They're not going to self-deport.
There's also a
probably suggested.
misconception that all of a sudden, you know, this thing gets passed. Say, show up to the line. You'll all get your citizen cards, and you're fine. There's preconditions here. You have to keep your nose out of trouble. You have to pay back fines here. You have to secure employment. You have to be a productive member of society, and I think that's the part of this that sometimes doesn't get communicated. It's a good thing for the country. Forget about what the country's based on, all the rest. But you want these people as citizens. You want these people paying taxes. You want these people to be contributing members of society. You think if it gets articulated that way,
Well, I think, Richard, that's a great point. I think there are two strong arguments in my view. I'm obviously 100% in favor of this, but one strong argument that I think is very hard to be against is the economic argument. And we should all be in agreement, if you do your homework, to the fact that if this pass is going to benefit the country tremendously, because we're going to get, you know, taxes. Suddenly they're going to be within the economy. They won't be able to go to the emergency room and be treated for a call, and we'll have to pay all of us thousands of dollars. Things are going to change dramatically for the better. And as you say, there's going to be some control. You cannot become, even if you want to do it legally nowadays, you cannot become a citizen just like that.
But
you need to go through certain channels and regulations. And I frankly don't believe, and President Obama said, right, you know, it may take 10 years for one of these, you know, from someone who's now undocumented to become a citizen. And that's great, but they need to be within the legal system. That's what worries me a lot. If you get into a car accident with someone that doesn't have any papers, doesn't have any insurance, it is a problem for
it
you.
almost incentivizes them to run, you know, and then, right.
I agree with what you're saying 100%. I just don't see how you're going to be able to change the minds of the low information voters who are the ones who are saying they're stealing the jobs of Americans and all of these other fairly derogatory comments that, you know, their mindsets needs to be changed. It's not just a political issue.
But that's very easy to change. I think those are a minority, and frankly, the very high-end, you know, immigrants that come to this country that are highly educated, they're not undocumented because, you know, if you're
visas,
undocumented,
right.
you cannot work. So the undocumented are the ones that are taking the jobs that non-American wants to take.
I think it's different. I think if anybody wants to get through, it's the Republicans. I disagree with you guys only because I know you're right that they said it all, but they look around, they see the country's getting less and less white. And if they don't do this, they're not going to win elections.
However, here, you know, they don't call immigration reform the third rail of politics for nothing. When I was deputy secretary under Elliot Spitzer, we proposed a plan that would give driver's license to undocumented aliens. Okay,
We all remember.
wow. I mean, the response from everybody was unbelievable. And part of it was the visceral reaction that this is going to somehow, in a post 9/11 world, is going to make us less safe and secure. But in reality, if people knew some of the nuances of the system, on any given day, there's 500,000 approximately deportation orders that are not being enforced. Why? Because the money's not put into that. You know, we've dealt with the southern border issue, and we failed miserably down there. So there are all these different issues, and you know what it takes? As usual, money. And part of the issue is if we put this in place, what are we going to do about the local interaction? Because do you have police officers become immigration officers who say, let me see your your card. You know, what do you have? There's a lot of nuances here, a lot of technical issues.
Real quickly, before we go to break, do you think the president's plan that he'll unveil in Nevada is much different than what we heard from these 8 senators? Do you think he's pretty much going to embrace the bipartisan plan?
No, I think he's going to take the bipartisan plan and make it even better. He's going to add his own signature, but I don't think he's going to come out with something 100% different. That would be a great mistake. But I think he wants to be the one remember for
Absolutely. And
this
Republicans want to be
accomplishment.
the ones to say that they brought it to you as well. All right, keep the conversation going online, everyone. Go to Facebook and Twitter and sound off. Should there be a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants? All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the love fest that was Obama and Hillary this past Sunday on 60 Minutes. Was it all just for the cameras, or do you think this thing's real? We'll be right back after this.